You still have. I had hair like that when I met you, almost.
uh, well, you look like you're in a hotel room, Harry. Where are you?
I am in a hotel room. I have big news, Bill. My oldest son is having a baby probably tonight or tomorrow. So
Wow.
I'm going to be a grandfather, my first one.
I just Nora, we she had her our first grandchild a year ago,
Oh,
and they're on their way here. They're going to spend.
oh,
I'm at the lake in Michigan, our lake house, and they're
yeah.
on their way here to spend the weekend here. So
Oh,
uh,
nice.
it
Well,
is what a great experience, man.
today on BeerNet Radio for a special edition, we call this kind of the old codgers segment. We've got Bill Hackett, who is the former president of Constellation Brands beer division. And before that, it was Crown Imports. And before that, it was Barton Beers.
That's
So
right.
you've been around. And I thought, maybe for our younger listeners who don't know who you are, how did you get into the beer business and how'd you end up at Barton?
Wow, Harry. I mean, we could spend hours on that alone. I won't bore everybody with it, but going back to my college years, which was like prehistoric for some of your listeners. Yeah, I attended college up in a small college in northern Wisconsin, and was I figured out that a good way to get by was to tend bar, that was my introduction to the business. Of course, I had consumed well before that, but I was tending bar, got a job in surety bonds as a surety bond underwriter. That lasted about 6 months because that just didn't work with my mentality, and ended up going back to Tenant Bar back in Milwaukee, and ran into a bunch of people in the beer business that said your bullshit is just too good for Tenant Bar. You should be in the beer business. And when I found out I got a car and then they paid for my beer, I said I'm all in. And that's when back in the mid '70s, when I started with Pabst Brewing Company. And during that time, I got to know a fellow that was hired in the Pabst by the name of Mike Mazzoni. Mike became my mentor, and I then followed him over to Barton Beers when he decided to come in and start putting some professionalism around this brand that Barton was importing with their liquor. The brand was called Corona Extra, and so
Yeah.
he and I got together down there and started really built out the company from then. So that was back in January '74. I joined. So
74. Wow.
yeah,
Barton had distribution or importation rights for the western half of the United States, excluding Texas. Gambrinus had it for the eastern half. Tell me a little bit about those early days. Like when I remember the 80s when Corona really started taking off, and then it kind of hit a plateau, right? Late 80s, you think?
just kind of. And to go step back when I first joined the company, we had the rights for all the states where Corona was approved, and it wasn't until '85, '86 where the country was split, and the former import manager of the business, Carlos Alvarez, convinced the board that he was the guy to take Corona to the next level. And they said, okay, we're going to split the baby. He got the eastern half of the country, we got the western half of the country, and with the eastern part, because it was a startup, he located in San Antonio. He got Texas, Louisiana, and Arkansas, I believe, and then we got the rest of the western U.S. and he picked up the east. So that was mid '80s, and then things were going gangbusters. We couldn't. I mean, I remember Mike and I sitting in the office at 10, 11 o'clock, and we were literally deciding where each load of beer would go when we got it, because the thing just took off. When I started, Harry, the business might have been about a million cases, maybe, and that was case equivalents because those were 20 bottle cases, and we didn't have 6 packs, 12 packs, 24 bottle cases. It was all 20 bottle cases, and literally we sold the beer bottle by bottle. So, yeah, and so the revenue at that time, if memory serves me right, was somewhere in the neighborhood of $12 million annualized. So it was really a fledgling business, but it just started smoking. And we put a little marketing behind it. And there was just this dynamic of what was picking up. In the West Coast, it was known as the surfers beer. It carried over to Texas, the border states. It was doing real well, and Texas it really had some a momentum going, and we were going gangbusters. And I believe by '87 the volume hit was right around it was 16 million for us, and I don't recall what Cambrinas did. But that's when the issue hit, and that was about the product being contaminated, and it hit the mainstream. And by the time over the next 3 years, our volume dropped in half, and we were working with Gambrinas, or collectively working to try and figure out how to address the contamination issue. Then there was a rumor on the East Coast about the beer had like 500 calories in it, and so you can't, you don't want to drink it. I mean, there was just all kinds of crap floating around.
And this was before the internet. Like, this is just trade
absolutely.
competitors probably spreading,
Well, it was. We found it. The guy that was spreading the contamination issue was actually a guy in the Lake Tahoe area, Reno area. He was a Heineken sales manager, and they were losing distribution and placement to Heineken beer, and they got pissed off, so they started this thing, and it was amazing the way it took off. But unfortunately, bad news spreads really quickly. Good news, not so much. Kind of like the stock market, And so we scrambled, and I mean, I was traveling the country trying to address it, and I was on radio shows, et cetera, et cetera. But we kind of got our grips on it in the early '90s, and I attest that to a couple of things. We had been sponsoring Jimmy Buffett. Jimmy Buffett was doing a great job as the face of the brand and kind of the lifestyle of the brand. And then I think there was a whole new generation that discovered the beer, and it said everything about the opportunity that the brand could bring to market, because it re-engaged with consumers and business. But really, it hasn't stopped since then. So it's been quite a story.
Part of that lore, and you can tell me if this is true or not, that when the excise tax doubled in '91, that you guys made the decision to eat it and not pass it on.
Yeah, that's correct. We realized that there was an opportunity, because our business had dropped in half, and we were literally, I remember Mike and I having conversations about, my God, we're going to have to reduce our workforce, reduce the sales team, and let's kind of rethink how we go about this. And so there was the federal excise tax, and then California, which was our number one market, was also looking to increase taxes. So we got together and said, nothing from nothing is going to leave nothing. So let's figure out how maybe we restage our pricing, create a point of difference aside from the packaging, the product, et cetera. Maybe generate a point of difference at the market level and pricing. So yeah, we held pricing, and it continued. What it did is allowed us to stay at a critical price point. And if memory serves me right, I don't know if that time got them. See, I'm getting old. It could have been $4.99 a six pack or whatever, but we didn't want to cross over that critical dollar mark, and it really put us in a position which kind of it got retailers behind the brand, and it rekindled that, along with the marketing. It just rekindled the business. So
right, and I guess the price compression between Corona and Bud Light and Miller Lite put it closer in there, so that
it provided some better posture relative to domestic, especially domestic lights, and it gave us a gap against the Heineken and the Becks of the world. So which over time has just it's kind of that whole gap has gone away. But at a critical time, it really gave us a point of difference and an opportunity.
When did you?
Can I interrupt here?
Sure.
I thought I'd pop a beer, and
all right, good for you.
this would be the beer hour for crying out loud. So
No, I know, and I was gonna have a beer if I were in my studio, but I failed to get it in time. So I always watch you drink beer. That's fine. That's fine. It's typical. It's the usual thing, Bill. Usually where's the tequila shots? I'm kind of upset that you're
well,
not.
that's about 20 feet away, but I figured I keep that beyond arm's length.
Keep it always at arm's length. I'm glad to see some things never change because I was with somebody. I'm trying to think. Just a week ago, I was with Craig Purser, and he was telling somebody else about you and how at the Modelo or Constellation party at MBWA, you
Yep.
stayed throughout the whole party. You closed it down. There was a line of distributors waiting to see you, and you would have a shot with each of them and still hold your own.
Harry, we got special pricing on those banquet rooms if I turned out the lights. So I
Yeah,
stuck around and literally did, and many of those events was the last one standing. And of
yeah,
course, that wasn't always the smartest thing to do because usually, certainly at our conventions, we had to kick off early in the morning, and I was one of the first speakers up, and there was more than a few times that I was a little raspy and had to have a couple cups of coffee to get rolling.
yeah. No, me too. I remember those days. Good Lord. You kind of, and also I want to point out, Bill, that you went through several progressions of what Barton was. And but before we get to that, so you get through the 90s and Corona starts growing again. Did you ever think, like, let's say in the mid 90s, that Corona would outsell Heineken?
It
Just happen.
overtook, and I think it was either 96 or 97. And I remember your counterpart, I got a call from Benji, and
Yeah.
he said, "Hey, by the way, I just got hot off the wires. Yeah, that you guys just based upon your numbers, you exceeded Heineken on an annualized basis. I don't remember if it was the end of the year, whatever, but that's neither here nor there. It was we had overtaken Heineken as the number one selling import. He says, "Wow," and I said, "Wow, that's pretty cool." He goes, "Well, you want to do an interview? You want to do a breaking story? You want to?" I go, "Well, not really." He goes, "Well, why not?" I said, "Because that was never the objective to begin with, you know." So I would, so it's almost. I mean, aside from the people at Heineken, it's a who cares, right?
Right. Right.
So our story is far bigger and broader, and the opportunity is far bigger and broader. So we just it yeah we yeah we I sent a brief note out to congratulate our distributors and our team, and we just went on. It's
Yeah.
our objective has always been, Harry, through the years. It was be the best that we can be, and every day we can be better if we really focus on that. And if you if you focus on being better, you'll never achieve it, but you can always be better. There's
Right.
never a game to it, and that's been borne out with. You see how the business has developed and how the company has expanded. And I mean, my goodness, who would have guessed that Modelo would go to where it was? Although I tell you what, I remember every convention busting every distributor out there about the fact that they weren't doing nearly enough on behalf of Modelo, and
Yeah.
it's great to see how the entire portfolio has continued to grow. So
Well, if you had told me that Modelo Especial would outsell Bud Light in my lifetime, I would have thought you were nuts. I mean,
yeah,
and it turns out every time you guys, you and Sabia would get up there at your Gold Network summits, and you'd say, "We're going to double sales or double distribution," and I'd be sitting there writing it down, going, "Good
yeah.
luck, buddies," and then it would happen. I'm not
Well,
blowing smoke. I mean, every time.
Harry, there was facts and information behind the challenge that we gave our distributors. Because I remember standing up in front of these guys, and Modelo's had, my God, decades of quarterly growth.
Yeah.
But yet we would languish in the 45, 48, 50%, 50, it would go, and in terms of overall market penetration. And on
Right.
premise, horrendous. And
Yeah.
I would just, guys, how much further down the path do you need to be led in order to
Yeah.
buy in? And we saw what was going on in other markets, and I always took the position that I can't take California and suggest that Illinois acts like California, because they're two different markets. They're two different
Right.
demographics, and I mean the whole dynamic is different. But holy shit, if you can't see that as the opportunity for where this business can be, then maybe you shouldn't be in the business. Come on, get on board. Oh, and so that was the kind of the challenge given to him, because everybody likes to talk about, well, Corona, look at how well we're doing. Well, if it was you, everything would be doing that well. So get back to work, because the brand is carrying the load here. So
Right.
and you
Right.
knew, and that was I was very straightforward in those conferences to make sure that people, they walked away with a clearly defined message as to what our expectations were.
And then what happens? So you're owned by Canandaigua, it changes
Yep.
to Constellation,
Yep.
and you're still kind of the Barton division, but then Grupo Modelo decides that they want to import or be involved in the importation rights. How did that? Can you give any like color on how that went down? Because did they want did they want it all to themselves, or did they? Do you
Well,
recall?
inside baseball is really, we were working with 5-year agreements
No.
between ourselves and Gambrinus and the brewery. And so we were coming to the cusp of an agreement, and I think that was in 2005 when we started talking about it. And I just at that time it was Andy Burke and I. Andy was running all of the spirits and beer business, and I was running the beer business. And I just said, we need to take a hard run at them and help them understand what we can do. And I can't say that was that was the end game. I don't know. I really don't know if they thought maybe that they could run the business here, but the point that I was making with them, whatever you do, you gotta put the business under one management team, because
Right.
the challenge between having two importers was that Carlos was and his team were generating a marketing message and generating activities and support efforts on behalf of the brand, and we were doing our own thing. So there was a disconnect, especially when it came to national accounts and accounts that overlapped our mutual territories. So we
Right.
just said, I just said, you got to do something about this. And at that time, it was Carlos Fernandez who was CEO, and so we pitched him, and I think that he gave some thought. And Carlos had exhibited some bad behavior prior to that, in taking on the brewery in a lawsuit, and
I,
just
I, I know.
so
I had a conversation with Carlos Alvarez, and and he was like, it was unfair. It was, and I said, Carlos, when you sue your supplier repeatedly, they're gonna get pissed off at you at some point. He
that's
kind of
correct.
laughed. He could see at that point at least.
To your point, so the contracts, the agreements were up, and Modelo said, okay, they decided not to renew Carlos's agreement, and we got in negotiations, and that's when we did the joint venture for the U.S. Excuse me, I think that got activated in 2007.
Right.
So it became a joint venture company. We picked up the East Coast territory that we didn't have from Modelo, and that was one of the designs behind having Chinga, the non-Modelo brand, Chinga, St. Pauli Girl,
Hmm.
and other brands that were in our portfolio, in order for us to ensure that we had at least an understanding of the dynamics in those markets that we didn't have Modelo. So in the eventual point that at an eventual point when we picked it up, we could be more or less hitting the ground running.
Right.
But
Because you already had a network
yeah,
with
but it
with
was
St. Pauli.
yeah, but it was the challenge was the network wasn't aligned. The business was a big business, much like it was on the West Coast, and so it was no small challenge assimilating that and running that business from day one. Because, oh,
Right.
by the way, as Carlos didn't get a renewed contract, it wasn't a very well positioned and thought through transition. We got absolutely nothing from he and his team, and so we kind of aligned into these.
I mean, it's funny in retrospect. I'm sure it wasn't funny at the time for you, but yeah, he
Well,
went up like $2 a case, and
it was
just
so
he just
we
milked it.
employed a number of different strategies, such as marketing, and
Yeah.
we applied a marketing fee. Well, apparently Carlos had already collected a significant marketing fee as he sold each of these markets to the distributors. And so it created a bit of a tense dynamic in our meetings.
Yeah.
But you know
Yeah.
what, Harry, as I told these guys, I said, listen, we're not idiots. We know how to run this business. We need your help to understand how to best operate it in your jurisdiction, in your marketplace, and we'll work with you. But the
Yeah.
reality is, there are some caveats. I am not going to change our MO that has been so successful for us in the West Coast for years, just because Carlos he got into your pockets in a different way than we are. So I
Right.
guess, but it turned out great. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, as you know, we aligned with a whole bunch of new distributors. Initially, they weren't so much friends, but they became friends and
Right.
became strong advocates. And you can see what they're doing,
Yeah.
across the board. So
So during that time, right in the middle of those negotiations, you were on stage on a panel at MBWA, and I was the moderator. And I don't know if you remember this, but I kept asking you, so when are you going to take over the whole country for Corona? And you're like, I'm not ready to talk about it right now. And for some reason, I just kept asking, like I thought I was going to get a better answer. And you started getting mad and you put your, you stopped, you so I'm not talking about it. And I'll never forget that afterwards, I remember Ray Guerin coming up to me and he was like, you owe Bill an apology. And I was like, oh shit, you think so? And he's like, yeah, you do. And I remember you and I kind of didn't get along. Well, I was from San Antonio, so I think people thought that maybe I was close to Carlos. And then Carlos thought I was close to you. So I got hate from both sides. And then I'll never forget, I don't know how this ended up, but somebody invited me to Chicago to meet with you. And we met in a bar. And I remember you had a leather jacket on. I remember exactly. And you and I hit it off. We drank the Coronas, we drank the tequilas. We had a late night. And then you and I were, we were friends after that. Friends, as friendly as a newsman can be with somebody he covers. So,
oh my God, yes, Harry. Yeah, yeah, I viewed you as an antagonist through the years, and just trying to get the upper hand on the story, and you weren't going to get it from me simply because
yeah,
our intention was always to be national. To make
yeah,
no mistake about that, it was from the early days of Mike Mazzone. Our intention was to be national and to really be the driver of this business going forward, because we had confidence in our ability to do just that.
yeah,
And so in fact, as we built the business on the West Coast, it was always with a thought in mind of, see, to the brewer, this is the capacity, the capabilities that this team has. We're smart people, and we're smart about the beer business. Maybe we're not so smart in terms of the stock market, but when it comes to the beer business, we've got a pretty good idea of what's going on and how it works. And it's not just about our business. You have to understand the entire business in order to have a quality conversation with our distributor partners, with Modelo, as well as with our competitors. You really had to have a full breadth of understanding in order to deliver quality and to be able to take the position that we took. And Mike and I and the team, yeah, that was where we lived. We said, we are smart enough to do this. So, not knowing when it would happen, but our intention was always that it would happen. And knock on
right,
wood, in 2007, it worked. But then it was like a 30-minute honeymoon, and then it was Modelo and Constellation going toe to toe, because the agreement we ended up with Modelo was a joint venture for 10 years, and
right,
and it would kind of fall apart after that. Oh, it
right.
sounds like my grandson arrived, so
No, it's all right. I'll be right there, right with you in just a few days.
kind of the approach that we took. And I looked you as, and I always looked at, I didn't always, I guess I looked at you as kind of the antagonist. And Harry, you're a good news guy because you love to stir the shit, and 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 you did that pretty well. And I figured, well, you may try and stir my shit, but it ain't gonna work. So that was
It ain't gonna work. I love it. I love it. Yeah, it was. I always tell my editors, if you're not pissing off half our readers on any given day, then you're not doing your job.
Well,
So
you got what you want to do is generate thought and give opinions that they don't necessarily get, and
right.
and, and may not necessarily like. Right. So
Yeah.
nothing
Well,
wrong with
you said it. You said it. Another conversation that we had, I remember you and Jim Sabia flying to San Antonio, and we met at some bar or restaurant, Mexican restaurant. And we're sitting
that.
at the bar, and you leaned over and you said, "All right, this isn't for publication, but we're going to bring in draft." And I said, "Oh, geez." I go, "That is the worst idea I've ever heard in the world."
Harry, it was at that point in time I knew it was the best idea we had.
And it was. It ended up being the best idea. I mean,
Yeah.
I was like, oh, you have to get the kegs back, right, and wash them, right, and all that. But it turned out to be a good deal. I mean, so how did you know it was going to be a good idea?
I remember I specifically remember that, and I think that was one of the first times that I brought Jim into a conversation with you, and he's
Yeah.
going, "We got to really be careful of what we say." All right, watch this, Jim, and so we go to the bar, and I might have had a tequila and a beer while we were waiting for you, and
Yeah.
he's going, "Bill, but we got to be careful." Okay, Jim, right? And this is Bill being careful.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
And so, I just listen. If we can't beat, there are certain things that are off limits, and Harry will know what those are. But aside from that, Jim being transparent, there's nothing wrong with being transparent and having conversations and also having disagreements. There's nothing wrong with that. So I remember you came up and we got talking. Then you got into the draft and you made your assessment, and I think I looked at you and I go, well, Harry, thank you. Jesus, I never thought of this shit. Corona being a brand, and my God, it's not going to be in a bottle. Holy, there's an epiphany. you know, but but understand, what we did was when we designed the game plan. Well, when we defined the gap was in sports stadiums and all those venues where draft is the access to consumer that we weren't capturing, and our business
Right.
was, as you know, was continuing to grow at double-digit clips, but all this business was out of bounds for us. So we said, well, our strategy was get into the venues, focus on venues. Let's not focus on getting on-premise distribution. Let's focus on venues and getting access to all those points of distribution that we don't, because, excuse me, either it's bottles and we didn't have cans. So
Right.
beaches, golf courses, parks, aside from venues, all were not accessible, and in many cases, those are the occasions where Corona worked so well.
Right.
So we just said, we got to have access. So it was not just not just understanding the gap, but then coming up with a game plan to manage the distribution, not
Mhm.
go market wide to every on-premise account. First, hit those key points of opportunity that weren't available to us in class, and then as we moved on, and you can see, Corona has never been a home run. I mean, it's not. It doesn't have the kind of representation that even a Heineken has in terms of points
Mhm.
of distribution for on-premise draft. But that was never the design, because our point of
Right.
difference is that bottle, it's the painted label, which all drive value perception. Then you throw a lime in the top, and it's like, my God, what a point of difference! I mean, if you think back,
Right.
Corona with the lime in it was the first. I wouldn't say seltzer, but it was first flavored beer that hit the market, because the consumer could then
Right.
control the flavor profile of their beer by squeezing however much lime juice they wanted to it. And
Right.
and so all those points of difference, yeah, we lose when we're
Yeah.
on premise, and it just goes into the only thing that people pick up on is the lime floating in the beer, which is, that's not the way it should be. It's not a great presentation. So
Right.
that was a very we thought it through a bunch before we went that, and we had a lot of radar on to ensure that what we needed to have done was getting done.
Right. Honestly, I didn't think of the venue angle as usual. I'm playing checkers and you're playing
Harry, Harry,
chess.
that's our job. That was, I mean, that
That's right. Yeah, that's why I'm not running a beer company. Clearly. Right. one of the marketing jewels and geniuses of the beer industry is Jim Sabia. How did he come about? Where did you? I know he worked. He was at Coors, right?
Yep. Yeah, he's actually the guy that was the godfather to Blue Moon. You know,
Hmm.
he and the brewer, I can't remember his name, worked together to develop the Blue Moon product
Yeah.
at Coors. I mean, and Jim, stepping back a minute, Jimmy's the guy that he started on the street in New York selling Coors, and he was a home run from the get go, and his experience base was just so strong he learned from the street up, and so he left Coors. I think when they made a decision on CMO over there, and I think Andy England got the position, and Jim said, "Well, you know, I'm going to see what's available." And we ended up getting him in the spirits company. Marty Burkle hired him to head up marketing for our spirits team. And then,
Hmm.
so that was going along swimmingly, and they're developing new products, et cetera, et cetera. And then Rob and Richard made the decision to sell the spirits business to Sazerac, Billy Goldring.
Oh.
And
Hmm.
you know, every time I see Billy, it was a great friend, and he was always front row at our conferences by virtue of the Arizona business that they have with us. And he
Hmm.
was always the first one to shake my hand and shake his head, and he always provided direct input after I got off stage at that.
Yeah, me
but
too at my
but
conference.
I would every time I got a chance to tell him, I said, "Boy, you really you really got a hell of a deal when you picked up the spirits line," and
Yeah.
uh, and he did. But it was so the company
Yeah.
decided to get out of spirits, and Marty was going, "Well, now what?" And of course, Jim was in a position. He's going, "Well, what do I do?" And so
Yeah.
we were looking at making a change and the marketing side. And I talked to Andy. I said, "So you know, I got inside baseball. I got a sense that this is going to be happening." And Andy goes, "Yeah." He says, why don't you take a look and see if Jim is available?" And one of the key, again, defining points of Jim, even through all the years that he was the time he was marketing spirits, every function I saw him, he had a Corona in his hand. He was a beer guy.
Yeah.
He
He's a
couldn't
beer
help him,
guy.
right?
Yeah.
And so I met with him. In fact, I met him at the same bar I met you at in Chicago, and we got talking. And I said, "So, you know, there's some changes coming down." And he goes, "Yeah, I understand that. I'm got to put my resume together." I said, "Well, you could do it pretty quickly. If let's have a conversation about the beer business and our marketing team." And he looked at me like, are you kidding?" I go, "No, I'm not." And so it was a quick conversation, and he jumped in to head up our marketing team. And the caveat I told him was, you know, that I gave him when he joined the company is, I said, "Jim, your charge is going to be, you know, you see what's been done." And Tom Nichols, you know, has fingerprints all over everything from the get go on, and did outstanding job. I said,
Mhm.
"But now we've got to get Corona off the beach. We got to give consumers the license to drink a Corona when they're not on vacation or thinking about vacation or, you know, in the fun and sun. We got to get them thinking about it when they're skiing, when it's Thursday night, when they're out with the guys and or out with the gals on a Tuesday night having dinner. We need them to be thinking about Corona then. So that's good. That's your mandate. Go do it."
Mhm.
And he did a great job.
Yeah.
I mean, he is a genius when it comes to marketing.
Yeah.
And uh,
I remember that because I remember the first Gold Network Summit where you presented the marketing for Corona, and you said this is a change. It's not going to be on a beach. We're going to show people in a bar in Chicago. We're going to show and I remember just thinking, oh shit, they're gonna screw the pooch on this one. And once again, Harry was wrong. Uh, it turned out to be the right call. And because a lot of people were saying at the time, when Jim came in, it was like, don't fuck it up. Like that's your mandate. Please don't
yeah,
change it too much. And he
yeah,
and he didn't. He kept the essence of the marketing there, but and then he did the same thing with Modelo with Fighting Spirit, and it's just it's been an incredible run. And Jim is he is a beer guy. I mean, they put him back into wine and spirits, and I'm like,
Yep.
he'll be back, and he did. He came back because Constellation's a beer company now. I mean, did you imagine that? I mean,
Oh
it's
my goodness. Well, we saw what it was doing early on, back in the mid '80s. We saw the growth, we saw the profit that it was driving, and quite honestly, we weren't getting any respect from the rest of the Barton team because we're a spirits company. Well, okay, but we're paying the goddamn bills, right? So it's
right,
not going to, but it that never seemed to sink in.
right.
But the other point that I would make, Harry, relative to marketing and Jim doing what he's doing, what Jim did was he truly understood the Corona attitude, the mental, the Corona is a state of mind. It's no longer
Mm,
just a beer; it's an attitude. And and the way he converted that to the bar was really unique. It's the people were casual. They weren't wearing ties, and they weren't all in a business type meeting or dinner kind of setup. It was casual people having fun, and you could readily I would say this time and time again. I could tell without you showing me the beer. I could tell if the guys in a New York pub were drinking Heineken or Beck's, or they were drinking Corona. And it was the attitude. It was if their ties were tight, if they were
mm,
drinking a Beck's or a Heineken, and if they were kicked back, the ties are down, and they're laughing and having fun. They're drinking Corona, and
right.
that's a state of mind. That's an attitude. And as I try, as we work through it, it was Jim. So we've got to figure out how to carry that attitude to all these other experiences, and still own them in a Corona way, right?
Yeah.
So he got that.
Yeah.
He really was. It was. I mean, he took us to another level, which was the challenge that I gave him, and he did an outstanding job, and continues to. So that's
Right.
I got a lot of respect for Jimmy and what he's done for this business.
And when you look at the beer industry today, like, is there anything that surprises you that's so different than, you
Well,
know,
I,
when
I,
you
I
were
was
in?
thinking about that. As I was just thinking about the call and what's changed. And yeah, I stepped out just before COVID. I
Mhm.
I fully retired in February of 19, and I did that for a couple of reasons. I did that because I listen. It's time for others to step in here, and as I'm sure you remember, we set up a foundation in my daughter's name, and I just said,
Mhm.
I need to. This is my next career. I need to get this going because it's not going to work doing it part time. Uh,
Right.
but the timing was genius in terms of not I can't even imagine what it was like going through the being in this industry during COVID,
Mhm.
because it's a personal communication relation, hands on. I mean, those are the people that are successful in this business because
Right.
I mean that's just the beer business, right? And
Yeah.
you go to conventions, and that's what the distributors are doing. They're thrilled just to be shaking hands and drinking beer with other guys that are like-minded, and it's just it's a happy inner communication kind of a business. And I think to answer your question, it's changed since COVID. And I
Mhm.
unfortunately, I think and a lot of industries have. I mean, how many
Right.
office spaces are vacant, and people have figured out they don't have to work from the office. And what that does, Harry, is it just drives at that foundation. It erodes that foundation of that one-on-one personal communication relationship. And when you lose that, you lose track of what's really happening, and you make some misses. And I would suggest that's exactly what happened to AB. They
Mm.
missed. They really missed that. It was and Unfortunately, that's in my mind that's the result of this business getting more distant, remote. It's not a business that works that way. And certainly, our success was the relationship that we drove with our wholesalers, with our wholesaler salespeople within our own team, to be able to go out
Right.
and I just interestingly enough, I had some family in town. I think I mentioned that to you, and so we're at Shaw's in Chicago. If you remember, that's where the Oyster Bar. I had my retirement there.
Mm.
I think I own half the place, but it's one of my favorite spots to go to. And I'm there with some family from Florida and California, and who walks in but Bobby Van Witzenberg, who was my assistant for I don't know 3 4 years, and he's now head of national on premise, and he's got his whole team there. And
Mm.
and so I sent him. He didn't know I was there, so I sent him
Yeah.
a tequila, and he looked over. And he went, "Oh my!" And he came over, gave me a big hug, and then I set the whole table of tequila, and then I went over and toasted with him. Then I had another one with him, but it was, you know, that's what this business is all about. Is that relationship kind of? It's not tequila. It's the
Right.
having fun and having some conversation. And I gave the guys a little pep talk about, hey, I need some. I'm trying to do all I can for you in Marco Island, but there's not nearly enough places that have Modelo on tap, and I keep hearing there's not enough inventory. I want to call bullshit on that, but I'm not smart enough to know that. So know that I'm trying to help you guys out. I will never stop.
Right.
But it's
I
having
mean,
that ability to interact and communicate with people that I think it was lost following COVID, because it takes work, and
yeah.
it takes commitment. And
Right.
I just think, to answer your question, I think that's one of the things, unfortunately, I think has changed, and not for the good. Uh,
Right. No, I mean, I hear that so often, from distributors who still get that, that you got to be in the trade. I mean, if you're not in the trade on a regular basis, you're not going to really know what's going on. And
yeah,
so,
no,
I
absolutely.
mean,
And
I
it's
think AB's problems would have been prevented if those people were in the trade and got, glad handing with
listen,
consumers.
they're smart guys over there. I mean, they're smart guys, and the challenge is that they yeah, I wouldn't let anything go down without double, triple going out and market testing and making sure that we're making the right moves. And I don't think they made the wrong move in terms of trying to embrace yet a wider franchise of consumers. They
Yeah.
just didn't realize how bad the messaging was.
Don't want to keep you too long. I know you've got family and dogs and
Well,
cats
that's what,
and all
Harry.
kinds of
I
things.
love talking beer. I
Yeah.
love talking beer. They get tired of me talking.
Yeah, my family too. It is. I mean, is it not still the best business in the world?
I mean, that's a great point. When you look at the foundation we had with Jim Ryan and Jim Sabia, Tom McNichols, Tom Winans, I got Marty brought Marty in the late '90s to really professionalize the sales group after Eddie Meredith screwed it up. I say that kiddingly, but it's a Eddie was, when you think about all the characters we had in the business, but they were all committed. They were all absolutely committed to build the business and do it the right way. And that's, as a result, we really built an incredible company. And
Right.
it's just, I don't know that I remember when I first was approached back when I was tending bar in the '70s, and they, how about the beer business? I go, wow, what? I don't want it. Why would I want to sell beer for the rest of my life? Good Lord, I'm a sophisticated old fashioned drinker, for crying out loud. I don't, beer was back in college. Well, then when they said, well, you get a car and you get all, you can buy all your friends and everybody beer whenever you're out. Well, I'm in. It's never been the same since, Barry.
Yeah,
So
that's
yeah,
right.
I think it's the culture is different. I mean, it's vastly different than the wine and spirits culture, and
Yeah.
it's vastly different from a bunch of other businesses, and it's incredible how when you build that and you believe in it and you support it, how well it can perform. And we were fortunate enough to be in that position.
Well said. It's still a people business. It's still
Yeah,
different from other consumer goods in that way. I'm convinced of it.
I still enjoy getting out and making retail calls, for crying out loud.
Oh no, Bill, are you still out facing beers in Publix and
I will pull them up if I see
yeah,
we're down. Absolutely. I always walk by the beer section,
yeah,
see.
yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, you heard it from the horse's mouth. He's still out merchandising beer, and do you still call in hot shots when there's out of stocks? And
I will let distributors know. What the hell? Come on. Well, it's I've got I'm beyond the point of having to go to three stores to find the right package of whether it's Pacifico, Corona Light, Modelo, whatever. So come on,
yeah,
make sure that you got your store counts down, and let's get this
yeah,
right. And when I'm down, your par levels have to go up. That's just the way it is.
yeah, right. Well, I mean, it's selling well when there's a hole in the cold box. So,
Right, right. But I don't want
well,
to miss the sales.
yeah, yeah. Well, it is such a pleasure catching up with you, Bill. Thank you for being on. I know our listeners would love hearing from you. And hey, good luck this weekend with your family coming in. And we'll talk again. Yeah. Cheers.
Hey, absolutely. So, hey, I enjoyed it. So, let me know if you want to do this again. But
Absolutely, we will.
next time you got to have a beer in your hand.
I will. I promise. I promise. I'm gonna go check and see what kind of baby is coming out here.
God bless you, and good luck. You
Thanks.
you will never be the same. Trust me.
Oh, good. All right. Well, take care, Bill. Have a good weekend.
Enjoyed it, Harry. Thank you. You take care too, and good luck.
Thank you.